We come together to bring heaven to earth. Opening our hearts, we rest in the wisdom of interconnectedness. We are all together in this wonderful adventure of life. We offer each being in this wide and wonderful world love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. May this wish increase more and more until it bathes the whole world.
May all beings have happiness and a cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they never part from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. May all beings have happiness and a cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they never part from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. May all beings have happiness and a cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they never part from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far.
Okay, great, wonderful, unbelievable. Here we are once again. It's so delightful to see our dear Catherine from New Zealand and Valentina from Chile. Oh my heavens. And Adrienne from the middle of the country, and Susie, and wow, Gina, hello, Trishana. Oh, look at all the lovely girls in Kauai. Yeah, So nice. And then Karen's down there in Ecuador, and Linda's right around the corner here in Maui. And Jazzy, okay, you made it. This is great. And Lily Hot, sounds like the storm didn't take you out today, so that's really nice. And Johanna, I can see that you're there, but there's just no image. And thank you all for coming. It's really very precious that we can come together today. Once again, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not prepared for this. What am I going to say? What do I have that's of any value? Let me go and see what notes I've been throwing into the folder this month. And sure enough, it's amazing, really. The universe is so amazing. This beautiful video that you just saw has an interesting story. Claire from New Zealand, from Napier, New Zealand, she goes to Australia for teachings with a Lama, Lama Chudak. And his students sing this song every time they meet. And so she sent it to us and said, can we make some kind of dance out of this? And of course, Midi and I were both very inspired. And so we've been working on it. We have several versions that we like or don't like, but at any rate, we had it recorded in Brazil by Ricardo, and the beautiful female voice is, what is her name, Midi? Ivana. By the way, Midi is here to support me in the room. Yeah, so of course I need help these days, I can tell you. At any rate, they recorded it for us in English, so the accent is really quite charming. And it sort of sat with them for a while we were trying to get information about the piece. And then one year, the next year, when we came back to Brasilia, or when I came back to Brasilia, Ricardo showed us this incredible YouTube that his son made. His son was in the university at the time and was so inspired by the music and the meditation and so forth that he put that beautiful video together. I was so moved by that. So it is on YouTube, and I will send the link around. And the music also is downloadable from our wonderful Dance the Goddess Emporium. Parvati just put it up for us. So welcome, everybody. That was my little opening welcome. And what was very interesting to me is the piece that I put aside to, you know, the notes that I threw into my folder to start with was in the newsletter by Ken McLeod. I'm always really inspired by Ken because he's so, he has such a tradition of study with these great lamas, especially my personal teachers of Boka Rinpoche and Kala Rinpoche. He did 6 years of retreat with them. He was their translator. And then he came back to the States. He was quite ill. And then he became a consultant for corporations. And so he had to devise a way of communicating profound truths that he had experienced with these great lamas. He had to make it available to them. So to take the context of religion out of it completely, and even the word spirituality, and coach it in ways that corporate America could understand, meaning how to make your life better, how to make things work better, but still using these Buddhist principles. So his development of language is extraordinary. He's quite an amazing translator, not only from Tibetan into English, but from classical intellectual English into day-to-day, we can use this here and now English. Well, he opens the latest newsletter with this quote: "If you are not part of the solution, you are part of the problem." And this is by Eldridge Clever. Now, those of us who are old ladies like me remember that whole period during the 60s of the Black Panthers and the whole rise of people, disenfranchised individuals, disenfranchised groups, stepping forward to insist this was particularly the women's movement, on equal care, especially here in America, but it inspired the world. The efforts that were being made by various and sundry youthful folk who were also intelligent, well-educated, and creative. So here we are with the idea, because very often people are asking me, well, what do we do about the conditions of our world? What do we do about it? What can we do? We feel so helpless in the face of it. And certainly when we look at this particular quote, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Okay, something is disabled. I have no idea what that means. Okay, no, it's okay. Yeah, we're okay, right, Joshua? Yeah, okay. Thank you. Okay. Anyway, if we think about this, what Ken goes on to describe in his paper is that the issue that we must really examine personally, carefully, is our interconnectedness, our interactions with every single person that we meet. How do we interact with them? And to observe carefully how we judge people as a group rather than as individuals. And this is so easy for us to not see, because someone presents themselves for whatever reason, whether it's in the store or walking down the street or in the car, or our next door neighbor, or it doesn't really matter who it is, but we need to examine carefully our prejudice, because prejudice arises through our classification of people in groups. Individually, one-on-one, if we open our heart to the person in front of us without this sense of judgment, then we hear their heart. We hear what it is that they're asking, not only from us, but from the universe at large, what they feel they're missing, what kind of acknowledgement, where is their sense of inadequacy sitting, where is their sense of separation sitting, the places that, according to our teachings, are the real cause of suffering, the distorted understanding of this life and how it presents itself. When we engage in this distorted attitude, meaning I'm separate from the world, what happens to me is individual, I have nothing to do with the rest of the world. When we separate from the unity, that is the cause of our suffering all the way down the line. We engage from that point of confusion, then we engage in activities that we think are going to solve the problem. And instead, they send us barreling in the other direction, meaning we attach ourselves onto an identity, and we do everything we can to cook up this identity. Now, in Buddhist practice, we chip away at this identity. We try to illustrate that it's a temporary thing. One of the problems with that is the languaging again, because very often you will find in classical texts, as they're translated by these wonderful translators, the idea of no self. And this sort of sends us into confusion and panic. What do you mean, no self? This is a very important question for us to address, because it's just like one of the classic translations in Hinduism, when I engaged in a profound study of that, it was that it's all an illusion. Well, what does that mean? How can I relate to what's an illusion? This table is as solid as the table has always been. It's not an illusory table. So, but from my understanding, of course, I won't even pretend to be these great beings, but from my understanding, it's not whether the table this is a table or whether it's solid, or it's my identification of it that is not a permanent, solid thing. It is not only a table. It is also an assembly of pieces of bamboo. And in other words, the table is the idea of tableness is not permanent. It's not, I can't say this is a table, it will always be a table forever after. It has always been a table. And we must apply this to our own self-identification. This is Prema, it will always be female, it will always have a certain education, it will always have a certain activity. That's the illusion, is if I grasp onto that and say, okay, this is reality, this is truth. Now someone else comes along and has a whole different perspective on who this person is, on who I am. Of course, they don't know me. They don't know me from babyhood. They may not know me at all. And they may come with a whole other set of classifications that I would have to say, no, 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 that's not me. But actually, it's me in their eyes, me. So the whole me business and the whole self business is not a solid circumstance. It is an ever-changing situation. And so the illusion is this idea that things are permanent and will always remain permanent, especially our self-identification. Now, how does this come into the whole idea of solution or problem? Because what Ken was talking about was in this article that I'm going to elaborate on, is what is compassion? What is compassion? What is the solution? Because according to these teachings, the solution to everything is to dwell in the heart of our wisdom, radiating our loving compassion. So what is being said here? Dwell in the heart of our wisdom means the full understanding of interconnectedness. Absolutely knowing what that means. The understanding of impermanence. Now, one of the explorations that we are encouraged to do, that I try to encourage all my students repeatedly, and that I continue to practice myself after 40 years, is the 4 thoughts that turn the mind. Because we need to understand, this is the basis of our wisdom mind, is the understanding of how extraordinary this opportunity is, how temporary and impermanent everything is, how there is a pattern, however, that can be observed that we call karma, action, cause, and effect, and how ultimately, if we do not see that everything is impermanent and constantly changing, if we cling to things expecting them to be permanent, then we are going to suffer. There is no way out of that. That is the condition of embodied existence on this planet. And right after that, once we recognize all that, what it encourages us to do is to turn away from anything that keeps us from understanding and living according to this understanding. If we live according to this understanding, then we enter into the 4 immeasurables, which is what the song was about. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. Because when we rest in the heart of our interconnectedness, we want to be happy. We want everybody to be happy. We know happiness then. We know happiness. And we know when we connect with others with loving kindness, it is the most glorious experience. It doesn't matter who they are. When we are actually able to touch their heart in whatever condition that they are in, it is a joyful moment for us. And then the whole understanding of compassion, of once we connect in love, then we feel whatever it is, wherever they're at in their process of understanding, in their process of awakening. Everybody's in a different place in this process. And this is a very important understanding. If we understand that everybody's, like Plato says, everybody's fighting a hard battle. Everybody is trying to make sense of being a helpless baby and being pushed around by family, by friends, by culture, shaping a psyche, shaping a personality that allows us to meet the world without danger, to understand our fears, to understand our impulses. When we open our heart, every single person that presents themselves to us, that is what we will hear. If we stop trying to sell our own agenda. Now, when I say that, this was a big aha for me when I realized that very often when we present ourselves to other people, we're not even listening to them. We have an agenda. We're trying to get them to like us. We're trying to get them to hire us, or to whatever it is that we want them to do for us. It's a natural impulse of the configuration of the brain that, according to these teachings, we must train ourselves to stop that, to take a few deep breaths and listen to the heart in front of us. What is it asking us for? And if we deal with that with loving compassion, that automatically that's going to release a tremendous amount of energy in the situation that will make space. So if we really do have an authentic agenda, there will be time and space for that. And if there isn't, it doesn't matter, because our agenda is so vast and our interconnectedness is so vast that if one thing passes us by, another thing is going to take its place. If we do not project ahead of us how we think it ought to be. Again, according to these teachings, stay in the moment. The future takes care of itself if we stay in the moment. The more virtue, okay, there's one of those words that I hate, but it really sort of says it. The more virtue we engender, the more loving kindness that we create in our life, the more vast our possibilities are. The more we can see how everything arising and passing away, if one thing falls apart, another thing is going to be born. So there is no, if we are not clinging to our own idea of the way it's supposed to look like, then we can be 100% present for what it does look like. And if we've established, now comes number 3, that we are going to be happy, especially if the people around us are happy. That is the best way for us to be happy, is for the people around us to be happy. It's challenging when we're around people who are not happy. In fact, our loving compassion automatically wants to engage in some way that can relieve that can open up the space for them to be happy. That's one of our goals here, is that as we rest in wisdom, radiating loving compassion, that we become more and more skillful and more capable, which we could also translate as powerful, to enable us to engage with all these different interesting people who bring their interesting ways of looking at life to us. So that's number 3, joy. Can we enjoy the joys of others and constantly wish them joy, constantly wish them to have whatever it is that they need, irregardless of what our personal situation is? Because our personal situation is taken care of if we can remain in that attitude. And then finally, the last of the Brahma Viharas, may we dwell in equanimity. So in other words, we are so solid, we are so, clarity, stable. We are so stable that it doesn't matter what's going on. We simply are there for it. That's equanimity. We allow whatever it is that's arising to be present, and without any reactivity. Or if we do react because we have patterns and habits that have been ingrained not only through this lifetime, but gosh knows how many lifetimes. So with these patterns that are ingrained in us, we learn to breathe through them, and we develop a strategy of disarmament so that we stop being at war with ourselves and we are at peace with ourselves. This is equanimity, allowing us, no matter what arises in the body-mind, that we are at peace with it. And by engaging in that way, this allows us then to rest in the Brahma Viharas. This is the other title for the four immeasurables, which is the heavenly abodes. If we have loving kindness, compassion, joy for the joys of others, and equanimity, that we are bound to be happy. That is the recipe for happiness. So I will continue. I got that out of the first line. I've got 3 pages here, but I'm so inspired by this. The other thing I wanted to mention about may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness, etc., is for myself personally, I, at one point, this must have been about almost 30 years ago, I'd say maybe 27 years ago, because the Tara dance had been going for, maybe 3 or 4 years. And I was having really a hard time. It was just, dealing with all the different personalities and their ideas about what I was doing. I mean, I was president of the Dharma Center. I actually had people telling me that by dressing women in saris and makeup, that we were presenting ourselves as prostitutes, and so that was an interesting journey. So I was getting really tired of interacting with people. And fortunately, I lived, and I still live, in the same circumstance, being completely isolated, if I want to be, from humanity, living up in the mountain and so forth. It was easy. And so I came home with I was blazing with anger and resistance, and I just, it was intense. I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. When we get to these places where we just want to kill somebody, and maybe we just better go, sit out in the garden and breathe. And so that's what I did. And fortunate for me, I had a very extensive garden. And so I, was digging in the earth. It was taking all of my energy. And as I did this, I started chanting this. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings dwell in bliss, free from all suffering. May all beings dwell in equanimity, free from attachment and free from aversion. Well, at first, it was just by rote. I just kept my mouth going, but my mind was still on kill. And it took a while. It took several days. It took several weeks. But eventually the words started to really move me. And I started bringing the image of all of these different individuals that were harassing me, or that their idea of me was harassing me. And I started really engaging with them with this practice. And when I did it for the individuals, rather than thinking about it as, everybody hates me, I'm going to go, well, I wasn't eating worms, but I was digging them up. When I realized, okay, let's just look at one at a time and say this prayer. And then it got me past lumping them all together in a group and really listening to my heart. What my heart said was the issue that was causing the situation. And I realized, and this is something that I've said many times to beloveds that are close to me, don't make it about yourself. It's not about me. What's being said here has nothing to do with me. This is someone else's observation of me. So if they are unhappy, there's some unhappiness in them. There is something about me that reminds them of some pain, some total disequilibrium, some situation that upsets them. Now, of course, I would wish that everybody would love me and say loving things. But on the other hand, here is my opportunity to really love this person and to be willing to do Tonglen with this person. So that really led me to exploring what it meant to breathe in another's pain and to see that it's not just the the moment. It's not just whatever it is that I'm doing that's causing them to say that, you know, I'm dressing the women up as a prostitute, because, you know, if I take that personally, that's very offensive. But when I looked at this person with my heart and didn't judge them, I got that, my goodness, this person sees powerful women who are expressing themselves in a creative way as a great danger. And somehow it's been presented to them that women in their power and in their glory, that this is not okay. So this is a terrible distortion, what this person must experience every time they see a powerful woman. And I was led to understand that for many men, this is a real issue. This is something that they have been trained to observe, to judge women according to these standards. So they're missing out, because the powerful, intelligent women that I know are going to, you know, they're going to dress up and they're going to do whatever they want to do and have a good time. And, you know, sorry, buddy, but you missed out again. So when I really looked at that and I thought about this person, I thought, okay, you know, whatever happened for you throughout your life that would cause you to feel this way, it reminded me of a story that had to do with the classical Indian dance in India. The dancers were the most educated of the women because they were outside of caste. And they were educated in what was called the 64 arts. And the 64 arts had to do with flower arrangement and yogic practices, music, dance, makeup, hair design. So the women that were trained as dancers were the most educated and the most well-dressed. They were allowed to have their own patrons, meaning lovers. And most of the time, these lovers were well endowed. And so the women were well endowed. They had plenty of money. They were dressed beautifully. And you know, they were the poets, they were the singers, they were the musicians. When the British came, to them, these women were prostitutes, because only prostitutes dressed like that. A well-bred woman would never dress in such finery, would never wear jewels out in public, would never paint their faces, and would never sing publicly, and would never dance publicly. So it destroyed the culture when the British took over India. It destroyed the culture of the dancing girls. But that was so much what I saw in this particular individual. And so it allowed me to just breathe in all of it, all the confusion that has ever happened throughout humankind's history, not to mention her story, and to breathe out my own absolute joy in interacting with wonderful, beautiful women, creative, powerful women, and give this as much as I possibly could to this individual, praying for their opening so that they too could enjoy the incredibleness of beautiful women expressing themselves in glorious ways. On the other side of that, just a little aside, because you know I love to tell stories, and this is one of my favorites. When I first taught Tara, dancing Tara, outside of Maui, outside of the islands, I think I taught on Kauai, but I was in Seattle. This was when I first met Damo Kushok, in fact. And the women that were dancing with me were very much part of a community. Some of them were very disturbed. There was a woman, you know, who had been raped, and we had all kinds of situations. And when we presented the dance, the audience was filled with husbands and boyfriends, and there were lots of men and big men, you know, football kind of guys, you know, big guys. At the end of the dance, the audience was crying. Now, stood up and gave one of the most incredible talks about the power and the importance of the tar dance. But I was quite intrigued by all of these tears by these big guys. I'd seen tears in dancers, I'd seen tears in the Maui Sangha, but this was something new to me. And one of these guys came up and said, I have to talk with you personally. So I said, okay, well, you can take me to the airport because that's the only time I have. You know, I'm packing up and going. So he did. And in the car, he told me, he said, you know, I wept when I saw this dance. And I said, yeah, what happened? I don't get it. And he said, I have never experienced a woman in her power without trying to stop her. From my mother was the first woman, and she had power over me. And so it was my job as a man to claim my power. And I did that by having power over women. So a strong, powerful woman in her power was someone to be controlled. And so he said, but your dance went on and on. And for almost an hour, I watched these women in their power, and I didn't have to do anything. I could just appreciate it and love them. Never had that experience before, and I needed to tell you how important it was. That was a big deal for me because, of course, you know, a lot of my concentration is about what's happening with women. It never occurred to me what was happening with the guys over through this practice. So that was important to understand. Again, we come back to this same story, which is it's an individual sitting in front of us with all of the various and sundry influences that this individual has had. And if we open our heart to them without judgment, without placing them in some special category of saying, oh, this is a football player, therefore I need to react to this football player this way because he's gross, he's big, he's brutal, he's unkind, you know, whatever it is that our mind creates as a classification is going to inhibit our ability to love them. So in this talk that, or in this newsletter thing that Ken sent, he kept saying repeatedly, do not relate to the group, relate to the individual, because each individual has their own hard story that they're working on that has driven them to whatever conclusions they have come to. And if the conclusions are distorted, meaning that they do not see the unity, they do not see the wisdom, they do not see the loving compassion, then they are suffering. No matter what they project, they are suffering. And whenever there is suffering, if our heart is open, our loving compassion will automatically want to give them whatever they can. Whatever it can, will want to help them to awaken into realization, into full realization, which is what we want to encourage everyone to do. That is the solution. When we talk of, if you're not part of the solution, that's the solution. You are part of the problem, because the problem is when we go like that to others, no matter who it is. The solution is when there is this open-hearted flow of wisdom and compassion, moment by moment, with whoever presents themselves in front of us. Yeah, so let's see if there's anything else here that I need to say, but I think I've been pretty thorough about this. So here's another piece that I thought was very interesting. So let's just stop for a moment and let me ask if you have any questions about what I just communicated. Linda? Okay, so Josh, could you unmute Linda? How do we unmute her? Oh,
Just give me 1 second. Sorry. Linda, unmute. There you go.
Okay.
I was trying to unmute and it said I couldn't do it. As you were talking at the very end, I was imagining a situation. It's like, but it hurts so much not to protect myself. I struggle with how to protect myself from some of that energy. Does that make any sense?
Yes. Okay. We feel that we need to protect ourselves if we're not big enough and powerful enough to keep our heart open.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, I want to close down my heart to protect myself.
That's right. But remember, nobody can do anything to your heart, because your heart, there's nothing physical, there's nothing, it is something that the aspect of wisdom and compassion that is your ultimate nature is infinite and ever capable, moment by moment, of being available in that way. So you need, if you, from my perspective, keep loving, just keep loving, keep asking, how can I love this person? How can I love this person? What is it in me that is resisting? What is it in me that is judging this situation? What do I see? And try to take it apart in that way. Because remember, it's not you. They don't see you. If their behavior is anything other than loving compassion, if their behavior is anything other than wisdom and compassion, then they don't see you. They see a completely distorted sense of reality. And because of that distorted sense of reality, they are engaging with you as if you were the enemy. You're not the enemy. Quite the contrary. You're on their side. You want them to wake up. You want them to feel the same love and wonder that you do about life. So that's when you do Tonglen. That's when you do Tonglen. You realize, when you realize how much suffering there is. There's a wonderful story that that Shabda tells, and I've told it many times. Those of you who've been with me for a while have heard this story. Shabda Khan is a very great Sufi teacher and a really dear old friend of mine. And he was just starting out in his he had just been made peer of the order, and he was traveling around a lot to teach. And he's a big man. So he had organized himself to get one of those, seats, those bulkhead seats where he can actually stretch out his legs. And so he's all happy that he got this seat, and he gets on the plane and he sits down and he organizes himself. I'm sure you can all relate to that. And off they go. Well, flying along, he feels something in his ear, and so he keeps, is it a bug or what? And finally he realizes that the woman sitting behind him has her foot on his ear. And so at first he's getting really pissed off, he had to pay extra and he had to jump through all the hoops to get this fabulous seat. And now he's got this woman behind him banging on his ear with her foot. So, he turns around and says something, doesn't do a thing, turns around and says something, nothing, nada. And she's sitting next to what he, took for granted that was her husband. And finally, in the middle of all of this, I think I remember the story correctly, she gets up to go to the bathroom. And the husband leans forward and says to Shabda, I am so sorry, he said, but our son was murdered. And she's not in her right mind. Well, can you imagine what happened with Shabda, right? So 1 minute he's like, what the hell is this woman doing, banging at me, giving me a hard time, and what's her trip? And then he finds out what her trip is. And so, of course, he's completely moved from irritation and aggravation to open-hearted, loving compassion for whatever, you know, however she feels the need to act out. He certainly was more than willing to be present for. It's an important story for us. Remember, in fact, those of you who received the full moon meditation that Liliha sent out, those of you in the student teacher program, she was talking about something very similar, you know, that we judge people according to what it looks like is going on. But the real heart of love looks beyond that into the heart of what it is that is causing the irritation, what it is that is causing the problem. This doesn't mean that we don't take care of ourselves. It doesn't mean that we have to sit around for a bunch of abuse. That's not what it means. It's about our own loving heart and recognizing how difficult it is for everybody. It is just really difficult. And we have the great good fortune of having received these powerful teachings and also having gotten together in this supportive group where we can articulate our feelings and we can hold each other. Now, I'm sure that every one of you who heard Linda's question and her reflection, all of you, your heart opened to her. You could feel her. You could understand how difficult it was for her. And you were completely sympathetic to her cause. You totally wanted to, whatever she needed, you wanted her to have. Because it was easy to relate to Linda and her story. So that, when that occurs, we know that we're not judging according, but what are we thinking about whoever it is who's harming her? Are we continuing to keep them in the circle of our prayer, in the circle of our wish, with the wish to free all beings? Are we wanting them to be free also? Absolutely we are. Absolutely we are. We must cultivate that every moment, if indeed we are part of the solution. Because the problem is not being willing to look at that. It's not being willing. It was, Linda, thank you, because it takes a lot of courage to even open up the discussion on something that causes you that degree of pain. And just because, you know, I'm giving you a few words, that doesn't mean that the thing is solved. But certainly it opens the door. I will reflect now, because this is what I do whenever somebody brings their situation. The first encounter, I simply open my heart and tell you whatever I've got. But then it continues to cook in me, because it's all, you know, it's our problem. All of it is our problem. It's not your problem. It's a universal problem of what do we do when people are hurting us? What do we do? And if it's not physical, if it's just verbal or mental, what do we do? How do we deal with it? What is the issue? And I can honestly say from my own experience, as I said, I had to go to the garden. I had to dig holes in the earth and chant for hours and hours at a time before my mind would release my resentment and allow me to see a deeper picture. But it worked. It worked. And what it left me with was an understanding that I can do this. I can do this. Whenever I'm feeling intense resistance to somebody's behavior or some situation, I can just jump right in there. Now, I want to point out, did you all feel a few moments of stop, mind? Right there, right there. When the mind stops, it relaxes into its essential nature. We're not familiar with this. And so instantly thought arises because that's our pattern. But in the various trainings of this of these practices that we're engaged in through Tara and the dance and so forth, we are becoming more and more accepting of these spacious moments, so that we can invite them, so that we can engage, so that when an event that impacts us approaches, we can relax into the infinite spaciousness of our mind and allow ourselves to engage from that wisdom point into the radiance of love. And insight will arise. Insight will arise to give you some idea of, okay, here's the next step. So in whatever it is that is causing the disturbance within you, that one of our jobs to do is to invite insight, to make our prayer, what do I have to do here? What is mine to do? How can I alter this situation so that there is more love in the world? How can I alter this situation so that this individual who is being aggressive towards me or whatever their situation is, how can I alter this situation so that there is more love and light in the world? Any other questions or anything, any other comments, anything that anyone would like to
Yes,
ask about
Donna,
or say?
Donna Conrad has a question. I'll go ahead and unmute her for you.
Thank you.
Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yep. Hi,
Oh.
Donna.
Hi. Well, I was going to ask about facing off with white supremacists, but I think you kind of answered that. It's very difficult. They're coming out of the woodwork here in Oregon. You know, and it's very difficult to go out into public and hear how they're treating other people. Being a white woman, yeah, I catch a little of the slack, you know, backlash, but the majority are most of the people of color that are in the area, and they get it. But I think you answered that. But I wanted to share something with everyone, that I have recently befriended a woman who is a genius in computer programming, a true genius. She came up with something when you said that your mind stopped. In program coding, there is something that is called an interrupt. And that is when all coding stops. There is an interrupt in the coding, and it allows the computer or the code to move in a different direction. And I thought that fits so beautifully with what you were saying. And I've been using that term, okay, let's just interrupt and move in a different direction. You know, stop it there. So that,
Hi.
you can talk about the white supremacist or the interrupt, it doesn't matter.
Nice. Beautiful. Thank you, Donna. That was beautiful.
Oh.
Okay. Anyone else have a question or a comment, something that you want to place before the group? Okay, great. Well, I've been ranting for almost an hour now. I do have a couple of other things I wanted to share with you before we got into our news. Okay, so one is, one of the things I've been working on this week is advertising for the event in Kauai, because you know, Midi and I will be going there in September. I have the date somewhere around here, I'll let you know. And what is it that we're going to do, and how are we going to present it to the group? So as I reflected on what it was that that we had to share, it turns out it's Friday the 13th, and a full moon will be our first engagement on Kauai. Yeah. And so thinking about that, I thought, okay, so if we want to multiply things 100,000 times, full moon, why don't we do this really the ultimate offering? The ultimate offering in Tibetan Buddhist practice is the tsok. This is when everybody brings some, it's like party time with Tibetans, but the party is not just the human beings, but the party has to do with inviting all of the unseen beings, starting with our sources of refuge. And then specifically, the party very much invokes the Dakinis, because if anybody knows how to party, it's the Dakinis. I mean, these girls, they are, you know, take off your clothes and dance. That's their thing, you know, and dance in the spirit of the eternal nature of ultimate mind. So I thought, okay, I need some words for this. How am I going to do this to present it in such a way? Because Ayana was in communication with me, and she said, you know, we've got to make it relevant. We need, you know, people, nobody knows what a tsok is, you know, except just a handful of people who've done traditional Tibetan practice. So we have to make it so that they would understand. Now, I have taken the text and rewritten it so that it can be understandable as a text. But how do we present it? So I was doing this research. I love the internet. You can just type in "tsok," what does it mean? And you get so much interesting information from all of these fascinating, intelligent, well-practiced lamas. Anyway, some of the quotes just really blew my mind, because a lot of the experience that occurs during these Tibetan rituals, if you are fully present and open, you have opportunity to experience certain things. So the first one was the aspect of offering at this to the Dakinis and to all of our sources of refuge invokes the inner fire. Well, that really got my attention. Invokes the inner fire. I thought the only thing that could invoke the inner fire was inner fire meditations, you know, Tumo and so forth, that are, you know, only taught to those who have a lot of experience with Tibetan practice. But this Lama went on to elaborate and said, yes, that is one of the ways that we invoke the inner fire. But the other way that we invoke the inner fire is through these practices of compassionate activity. And the third way is through the practices of recognizing the infinite spaciousness of our own mind's essential nature. So whatever practices lead us to those experiences, that awakens the inner fire. Now, the inner fire has to do with our capacity to generate what we might call merit. It's this refined energy that allows us to engage in interactions from an extraordinary perspective. It is the source of siddhi, which is extraordinary power. So with that in mind, I'm going to continue these quotes, right? So it is said, by engaging in this level of practice, we pacify disease, famine, and warfare. We find inspiration to magnetize whatever we need to fulfill our personal prayers. Through these practices, transform the mind, swiftly developing qualities that really benefit others on the most profound level. So I want to repeat that sentence because I want you to really understand what that means. Swiftly developing qualities that can really benefit others on the most profound level. Now, this is what they call siddhi, extraordinary powers, the ability to hear another person's heart, what it is that they're really asking you for, no matter what their behavior is. So talking about the white supremacists, what is their trip? Why are they behaving the way they're behaving? Well, if you look at the individual, you discover, because my father was right up there, so it took a lot of time for me to understand his attitude. And what I got was a basic underlying fear. He was terrified. He was terrified of being taken over and enslaved. And it's a real fear. And it's a real possibility. Perhaps because, you know, when I was in SDS, Students for Democratic Society, I used to march with groups. And I remember at one point I was in Washington, D.C. for a march, and there were some Black Panther folk who were giving their talk. And this one guy was going on and on about Whitey, you know, how we had to stop Whitey no matter how, and we were going to stop Whitey. And it was extremely aggressive and inciting a dangerous level of aggression. And I looked at that and I thought, this is no different. I'm not supporting either of these groups, the white or the black, because they're not. My desire is that we all live in peace and honor each other, not that we're going to have another war. It reminded me of Mother Teresa when she was asked if she would march against the war. And she said, no, I won't. And the people who invited her said, well, why not? And she said, I will march for peace, but I will not march against anything. The power of the word, the power of our orientation. So anyway, to continue this, the effectiveness of these practices that we do together is increased when undertaken together as a group. So for us to meet together like this in this Zoom context is really very precious and powerful. While it might be difficult, now this was a quote from one of the old lamas. He said, well, it might be difficult for one person to move a boulder, but if you get 20 guys around it, it moves easily. So the idea is when we gather together in a group and we concentrate our loving attention and bringing blessings to everyone, that it is more powerful than if we're just doing it on our own. So in this way, I want to invite you all to continue to meet with us, you know, on these wonderful Zoom options, but also do what you can to come wherever the groups are meeting and come together, even if it's just 2 or 3 people, to affirm the preciousness of your humanity, the preciousness of our humanity, the preciousness of this great opportunity that we have being awake and alert and aware of the interconnectedness of all that exists. So I'll end with a little quote, which this is Hawaiian. Aohe hana nui ke alui e. No task is too big when done by all. So we gather together in spirit and we pray together that those who do not understand the incredible necessity of seeing the humanity in each person that they meet, that they may be liberated from their pain, so that they can truly see the wonder and the preciousness of our human life. Whew. Okay, so then now the next thing that I want to share with you is the news, our wonderful Dhatu news. So the first bit of news is to explain to everyone that just recently, now Miri and I have been struggling with knee problems, and we found a great deal of help. And in the middle of all of this, one of my dear practitioner friends, Jorg is his name, said, you know, you should get your spine checked. You should get an x-ray. So I did. I went and got an x-ray of my spine. So we discovered with this x-ray some very interesting things. First of all, I have a rather severe scoliosis. This started happening a few years ago. I had no idea, and it had developed, and this was the source of my back pain, which was very interesting. But the next thing was really amazing. The nurse practitioner who called me to talk about this said to me, "You have a very big heart." I said, "Oh, well, I don't know how you got that from the x-ray." She said, "No, literally, you have a very big heart. You need to pay attention to this. Big hearts are not a good thing." So we're doing a little bit of research. Yes, I understand. Big hearts can be a problem. In fact, it's it's sort of opens the door to heart disease. So I thought, okay, well, that's good information to know. And so she had a variety of things. I have a partially collapsed lung. Who knew? I have, it was amazing. So it reminded me, when I used to be a massage therapist, and I had a lot of clients who were doctors. And one doctor, at one point, we were having a conversation while I was working on him, and he said, I have been doing autopsy on some very elderly people. I'm talking about late 80s, early 90s, and this was more than 35 years ago. And he said, and one thing you realize, he said, is that many of these older people have so many issues that we never even knew they have all kinds of organ inhibitions and growths and all kinds of things. But it didn't stop them. It didn't, in fact, they never came to us, so we didn't know what was going on. So he said, the body is capable of adjusting to all kinds of situations. Just because we see something, we think we need to do something about it. But he said, not necessarily. In fact, doing something about it could inhibit the continuity of life. So I always kept that in mind, that just because something is going on, you really don't have to do anything about it. I'm no different today than I was, 3 days ago before I got this test. So I wanted to assure all of you that, as my doctor says, I am aging. So I have all of these conditions. But actually, Midi and I started up our dance practice, and we're doing really fine. Everything is fine. So if you hear other things, know that everything is possible. Everything is part of the story. And no matter what, we are doing well. On that same note, however, things are impermanent. So I want you to also think, if it's meaningful for you to be together with me and with our group, make the effort to do that, because we don't know how much longer it's actually going to happen. It's sort of like that. It's all impermanent. So now, if you're going to be visiting Maui, we are going to do 2 events before heading off to Kauai, August 30th and August 11th. These will be our evening practices on Maui, focusing around, August 30th and September 11th. Yes, I say me and September have been having a dance here. So focusing close to the full moon on the 11th and the new moon on the 30th. So then the Kauai event is September 13th, full moon. And then the 14th and 15th, we're going to elaborate on a variety of dances. So we have been working with a new red tara dance that's really exciting. It's really a beautiful piece of exciting music, Red Tara the Magnetizer. So we're going to be doing that on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we're going to work with the power of the protectors. We have assembled a dance to Black Tara, Dukar, not Dukar, Troma. And we're going to work with Troma and Dukar as protectors, the idea of the protector in Tibetan Buddhist practice, and devote that energy to Elizabeth Breck, who has been responsible for both of those practices and dancers. If you're in the Bay Area of California, Dance with Pia. That's going to be the 21st to 22nd of September. And she's a wonderful teacher, so I hope you get a chance to do that. And then the Great Northwest is developing beautifully. Our mandala for Seattle is completely full. We have 21 masked dancers, and we have 6 protectors. Now, this situation is exceptional, and I'm very happy to also say we have some of our students and friends coming in just to be present with us, because Damala is aging. We don't know how much longer she is going to really be public about her presentations. And so we want to be there with her. And of course, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be traveling. So this is a big deal. If you have a chance to get to the Northwest to engage in any of our practices, please do. We have settled the event on Orcas Island, so we'll be concentrating on calling Tara from the heart and white Tara of the Six Shields. And this is all in October. Everything is on the website. And those of you who have been making donations, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I will send all the notes to you to make sure you have all the dates. And I have quite a lot of notes that I didn't even touch, as usual, because I start talking and my heart opens, and there we go. Okay, then December. This is really exciting. Adrienne has been invited to teach in Costa Rica. And so she is going to be offering teaching classes and so forth December 28th to the 30th. Again, this is already up on the website, and I will have it in the notes when I send them out so that you'll all be able to jump over to Costa Rica. That's so exciting, Adrienne. I'm really happy about that. Then, of course, Parvati will be guiding the annual Tara Mandala in Phoenix the weekend of November 8th through 10th. So just a little message about our darling, most wonderful, precious Parvati. She's been having some personal challenges in her life. And so she has asked to be able to step back from many of the administrative duties that she's been handling for Tara Dhatu for years now. Precious woman, she has done so much to keep us stable and legal and oriented. And so she felt that everything was in a position for her to step away. Well, this just sort of places the burden on me for a little bit. So I am looking for anyone who is willing to help us with some of our administrative duties. Just send me an email and let me know, because I will need help. Right now, Miri has stepped up, and David and Josh are helping. And so we're managing. And Parvati's not going anywhere. She's remaining as a consultant, and she's helping. But we want to take as much of the burden off her as we possibly can. So that's a little heads up. Yep, keep thinking about that. On my way to Brazil, I will probably be offering something in the Bay Area. I'm already in communication with Lori about that. It would be mid-February. Most likely I will be going to Austin, Texas again. I'm waiting for Anjali. And then there's a possibility of a Florida something or other. We've been talking about it, and so that might happen, just to give you a heads up. On my way back, I'll be with Miri then. This one will, I'm on my way to Brazil. Miri won't be with me. But on the way back in June, we will both be available. So if anyone wants to talk about organizing something on the mainland, let me know, and we'll see what we can do during June. Okay, then of course, Miri will head off to teach the Chilenos, which is pretty exciting. They have 32 already signed up for their retreat, and they have a waiting list. So this is really very, very special and precious. We have a few events planned for Brazil. One confirmed, Florianopolis. This is the Maui of Brazil. So we'll go and spend a weekend down there. But I really wanted to say we're going to take a group to Ecuador, and that has definitely started coming into focus. So if it's part of your desire to visit this marvelous culture and this wonderful land of Ecuador, please think about coming. The Tara dance will be April 16th through 19th. We'll arrive in Quito, which is the capital, and spend a couple of days, and then we'll go to Cuenca, which is where the events will happen, the Tara events, and then we'll go to Vilcabamba. Vilcabamba is famous as one of the places in the world that has the purest air and water. But I've also heard that it's a really lovely village, and so it would be very nice to visit. And so those who come with us have the opportunity to return home at that time, or they can extend the visit for another week, and we'll pop over to the Galapagos and check out that little magical area. So think about it. We're only going to take 10 or 11 people with us. So if you're interested, let us know as soon as possible. I think that's all I really need to discuss. The rest you've heard before, and it's all on the website. So, dear ones, is there anyone who has anything that, oh, good, the Kauai girls are waving. Okay, does this mean, so Josh, could you sort of open that channel? Because if they want to say something, it'll be sweet.
Sure. What name are the Kauai
Trishana
scholars?
Star.
Trishana. Okay.
Trishana Star. Trishana Star, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay, girls, what you got to say? Oh, we can't hear you. Trishana, is your sound up?
They're unmuted, but it's not showing anything.
And they just disappeared.
Oh.
Ah, here they are. Okay. Okay.
They're unmuted.
I know they're unmuted. We can't hear you. So go ahead and write your question or whatever it is that you want to say in the chat.
And you're welcome to try to unmute yourself.
It says unmute there, but we can't hear you.
Hi, can you hear now?
Yes, 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 there you are. What's up? Oh, wait, now you disappeared again.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
I think you need to come close. Hello, we can hear you. What's up?
Okay. Okay, so we started to get registrations for September, Hip Hip Hooray, today in class and other ones. And Suzanne, who was here on the Zoom, she's rented a Airbnb, and there might be people from here, or maybe if people from Maui want to come. Anyway, I'm very excited. We're very excited about September.
Okay.
And, Tara Camp 2020, we didn't mention.
Okay. Yes, it's coming. It's coming. Definitely. We'll check it all out when I get there. We will go over to Camp Naue. And yes, next year we have the things that I didn't mention that are on the books is in August. We have our wonderful camp out on the beach on Kauai, a week. And then in September, we have in Colorado, Sotramalioni. And retreat. Yeah.
September
No. Siltram is at the end of September.
End of September, okay.
Yes, Siltram is September 23rd through 28th.
So I'm going to visit Taramandala. I'm visiting Taramandala in a few days. So
Oh, great.
do some of our practice on the ground there, and just because, and you know, juice it up. Anyways,
Yeah,
does anybody
juice it up.
want to say anything to Prema right now? Can't wait to see you.
Okay, darlings. Anyone else have anything they want to say to the group? Or actually, I can just sort of step out and let you talk to each other. But is there anyone who has anything they want to say to me?
Everyone now has the ability to
Okay.
unmute themselves, by the way.
Yeah, you can all unmute. And I'm so happy to see all of you. I'm very happy to see that Atlee is part of our journey. Wonderful. I've been thinking about you. And so now together, let's just dedicate whatever merit we've generated through this sincere gathering to the benefit of all beings, that we can all, especially for ourselves, that we can keep our hearts open, that we can remain stable and clear to see how we can be the solution and not the problem.